Welcome to this deep dive. We've got a lot of really fascinating material today, all about how to live a more fulfilling life. And it's interesting, every single one of these sources kind of touches on the same idea.
Yeah.
Which is that to really feel fulfilled, we have to embrace what makes us unique.
That's spot on. And what struck me about the material you sent is that they actually offer like practical steps.
Oh, yeah.
To take that idea from, just a concept to something you can actually put into practice and live by.
It's like, okay, yeah, we get it, be yourself.
Right.
But how?
Exactly. And the sources go beyond that. They talk about shifting your perspective.
Yeah.
You know how two people can look at the same situation and see it completely differently?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like what one person sees as a total obstacle, another might see as an opportunity?
Absolutely. But how much control do we actually have over how we perceive things?
Well, one of the sources uses this powerful analogy that was really great.
Okay.
Imagine you're like really thirsty in the desert and you come across a well. Is the water good or bad? You just don't know until you taste it, right?
Right.
But your perception of that water is shaped by what you already believe about wells.
So you're saying if you grew up like hearing stories about how well water is the purest, most refreshing water, you're going to approach that well with a positive expectation.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if your only experience with wells is from like scary movies,
Oh, right.
you might be hesitant to even take a sip.
So basically, our past experiences and beliefs really color how we see the world.
They do.
Yeah.
It's like those beliefs become a lens through which we see everything.
But that also means we have the power to change our perspective, right?
It's not always easy. But yeah, we can learn to question those assumptions
Right.
and choose to see things in a new light. And that ties into the whole idea of embracing our uniqueness.
Which I love that concept, but it can feel so daunting,
Oh, yeah,
especially when there's so much pressure to fit in,
absolutely. One source actually compared it to that Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken.
Oh, yeah.
Choosing the path less traveled can be scary.
Sure.
But often it's the path that leads to the most fulfilling destination.
Because it's the path that's actually aligned with who we are,
Yeah.
not who we think we should be.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But to really embrace that uniqueness, the sources highlight two key ingredients:
Okay.
belief and trust.
So first, belief. Belief in what exactly?
Belief in yourself.
Mm.
Belief that your unique talents and perspectives have value. Like trusting that what matters to you might actually resonate with other people too.
Mm.
It's about quieting that inner critic that tells you you're not good enough,
Oh, I know that one.
or that your ideas aren't worth sharing.
Yeah, that resonates with me, big time. I think everyone struggles with that inner critic.
Yeah, definitely.
So what about the second ingredient, trust?
Trust is about trusting the process of self-discovery. Acknowledging that it's a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
Being okay with not having all the answers and being willing to adjust course along the way.
That makes sense. If we're constantly striving for some imagined perfect outcome, we might miss out on the beauty of the journey itself.
Yeah.
Exactly. One source had this quote that really hit home for me on this.
Okay.
People wait all week for Friday, all year for summer, and all their lives for happiness.
Wow. Okay, that's powerful.
It's like we're constantly putting off living fully until some future moment.
Right? Like, what if that moment never comes?
That's the danger of tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's why the sources emphasize starting now, not waiting for the perfect moment, not waiting for permission, but taking action today.
Because even if it's a small step, it's still forward movement, right?
Exactly.
Well, what about those times when we feel stuck? Like, what if we think we're held back by things that are outside of our control?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting. The sources actually argue that what often holds us back isn't external circumstances, but our own internal barriers.
You mean like we might be blaming our lack of progress on our job or our family?
Right.
Or like a lack of resources?
Exactly. But really, it's our own self-doubt or limiting beliefs that are keeping us stuck.
So it's like we're searching for our lost keys everywhere except the place where we last saw them. That's a good way to put it.
We're looking for external validation when the answer we're seeking is actually already within us.
Yeah, and that can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of these ideas connect. But
Yeah.
if we're so often held back by our own beliefs, how do we even begin to break free?
One source talks about the importance of finding your arena,
Okay.
the space where your unique talents and passions can thrive.
I love that idea. It's like figuring out where we naturally excel. where we can be in our element.
Exactly.
But how do we actually find that space?
Well, one source uses this really compelling analogy.
Okay.
Imagine a fish trying to climb a tree.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
That fish is going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
And feel completely inadequate, not because it's incapable, but because it's simply not in the right environment.
So it's not about the fish's abilities. It's about finding the right context for those abilities to flourish.
Precisely.
Okay.
We need to figure out what our water is, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's the game where our strengths naturally align.
That makes a lot of sense. But for someone who's feeling lost
Yeah.
or unsure of their path, how do you even begin to identify that arena?
That's a great question. One source offered a few thought-provoking questions to consider. One that really stuck with me is this. What would you do if money were no object? Like if you remove financial constraints from the equation, what are you left with?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
It is, right?
It forces you to think about what truly motivates you, what you'd pursue simply because it lights you up, not because it pays the bills.
Exactly. And sometimes just asking yourself that question can unlock a whole new level of clarity.
This is giving me so much to think about already.
Me too.
All right, before we move on, can we rewind for a second to those limiting beliefs we were talking about?
Sure.
How do we even know what beliefs are holding us back? And how do we start to shed those layers?
One source uses this powerful visual. I thought it was so helpful to illustrate this process.
Okay.
Imagine someone wearing layers upon layers of clothing and then frantically trying to take them all off.
I remember that one. It's like they're suffocating under the weight of all that extra baggage.
Exactly. And that baggage can represent all sorts of things. Limiting beliefs, past experiences, concessions we've made that no longer serve us.
So it's not just about identifying those beliefs, but also about actively choosing to let them go.
You got it.
Yeah?
It's about creating space for growth. If our pockets are already full of those burdens,
Right.
how can we possibly make room for new possibilities?
Okay, that really clicks for me. But what if those limiting beliefs are deeply ingrained?
Yeah,
What if they feel like part of who we are?
that's a tough one.
How do we even begin to challenge those?
I think self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
Becoming conscious of the stories we're telling ourselves, the assumptions we're making about our limitations,
Right.
and then gently but firmly starting to question those narratives.
So instead of just accepting those beliefs as truth, we start asking ourselves, is this really true?
Yeah.
Is this serving me? Or is it just a story I'm telling myself based on past experiences or limiting beliefs?
And sometimes the answers might surprise you.
This is all starting to feel like a call to action.
It is.
Like a call to stop waiting for permission and start living a life that's truly aligned with who we are.
And remember, the good old days are happening right now. Let's not miss out on the present moment by constantly striving for some future ideal.
Right. There's so much to appreciate and enjoy right now. But what if we hit a roadblock?
Oh.
What if life throws us a curveball and our confidence takes a hit?
That's where the sources offer another powerful analogy. I love this one.
Okay.
They compare facing difficulties to diving deep beneath the surface of water, just to remember how badly you need the oxygen above.
Whoa, okay, I'm seeing the connection.
Yeah.
It's like those moments when you come up for air after being underwater for a while. That
Yeah.
feeling of relief and appreciation for that simple act of breathing.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that challenges are not setbacks, but opportunities for growth. It's in those moments of struggle that we often discover our true strength and resilience.
So instead of viewing those difficult times as failures, we can see them as stepping stones on our path to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
I love that reframe. It's so powerful.
Okay, before we dive into that, I think we should pause here
Okay.
and pick up this thread in part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. We've covered a lot of ground already.
There's so much more to explore.
I know. I'm excited for part 2.
Huh.
It's interesting how we're kind of conditioned to think that any discomfort is a problem that needs to be solved immediately.
Yeah, it's like we're wired for instant gratification, Got a problem, gotta fix it now.
Right. But one of your sources makes a really good point about that. Instead of rushing to fix things, maybe we should actually try to lean into those uncomfortable moments. See them as a chance to reflect and understand ourselves better.
So almost like a signal that something needs our attention. Not necessarily something to change, but something to learn from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that idea of trust. Trusting the process. Trusting that there's wisdom to be found in those moments of discomfort.
So rather than trying to shut down those feelings or distract ourselves from them, we can choose to just sit with them and see what they have to teach us.
And that's not always easy.
Definitely not. especially in a world that's constantly telling us to be happy and positive and productive all the time.
Yeah, we're bombarded with these messages that any kind of negative emotion is like a sign of weakness or failure.
Right. But maybe those difficult emotions are actually trying to point us in the right direction.
And maybe that direction isn't always forward. Maybe sometimes it's inward.
I like that. So it's not always about striving and achieving and constantly moving forward. Sometimes it's about pausing and reflecting and going deeper within ourselves.
It's about getting to know yourself on a deeper level.
Which brings us back to that 5-year plan paradox we touched on earlier.
Ah, yes, that rigid idea of mapping out our lives years in advance. One source had a quote about this that really made me think, if you know exactly what you're going to be doing in 5 years, you're thinking too small.
That's a pretty bold statement, but I get it. It's like we're trying to control something that's ultimately uncontrollable.
Life.
Right.
Life is full of surprises, twists, and turns. If we're so fixated on one specific outcome, we might miss out on amazing, unexpected opportunities that present themselves along the way.
But isn't having some kind of plan important for achieving goals? How do we reconcile that with being open to those detours?
That's the paradox. It's about finding that sweet spot between intention and flexibility.
Oh, okay.
It's like setting sail with a destination in mind, but being open to adjusting course if the wind shifts or a new island appears on the horizon.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not about abandoning goals altogether. It's about holding them lightly and allowing for the possibility of change.
Exactly. It's about embracing the adventure of the unknown and trusting that even if we veer off course, we'll still end up where we're meant to be.
That's actually quite reassuring. It takes the pressure off of having to have everything perfectly figured out.
Right. And speaking of pressure, one thing that often weighs us down is that need for external validation. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that well analogy we talked about earlier?
The one where our perception of the water is shaped by our past experiences and beliefs.
Exactly. Well, often we're looking to other people to tell us whether the water is good or bad.
Yeah.
We're seeking their approval, their permission, their confirmation that we're on the right path.
And in doing so, we might be giving away our power to define our own reality.
Exactly. We might be waiting for someone else to give us permission to be ourselves, when the only permission we really need is our own.
It's like we're outsourcing our self-worth and happiness to other people when the answers we're seeking are already within us.
And that brings us back to the importance of listening to our inner voice. That quiet whisper of wisdom that guides us toward what's truly authentic and fulfilling.
But sometimes that inner voice can be hard to hear, especially when we're surrounded by so much external noise. What are some practical tips for tuning in and listening to that inner guidance?
Well, one thing that helped me was to create space for silence and solitude in my life.
So instead of constantly seeking distraction or filling every moment with activity, we can make time for quiet reflection.
Exactly. It could be through meditation journaling, spending time in nature, or simply taking a few minutes each day to sit in silence and listen to your breath.
It's about creating those pockets of stillness where we can connect with ourselves on a deeper level.
And as we start to tune in to our inner voice, we might also become more aware of those limiting beliefs that are holding us back.
Because those beliefs often show up as negative self-talk, right?
Yeah.
Those doubts, fears, and insecurities that whisper in our ear telling us we're not good enough or smart enough or worthy enough.
Exactly. And those whispers can be so subtle that we might not even realize they're there, but they can have a powerful impact on our actions and choices.
So how do we start to challenge those beliefs? How do we disentangle ourselves from those negative thought patterns?
One technique that I found really helpful is to simply become aware of those thoughts as they arise. Notice them without judgment, almost as if you were an observer watching clouds drift by in the sky.
So instead of getting caught up in the content of those thoughts, we can just acknowledge their presence and let them pass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as we become more adept at observing our thoughts, we can start to question their validity.
We can ask ourselves, is this thought really true?
Yeah.
Is it serving me? Or is it just a story I'm telling myself based on past experiences or limiting beliefs?
And often when we shine a light on those negative thoughts, they lose their power over us.
It's like they can't survive in the light of our awareness.
Precisely. And as we start to dismantle those limiting beliefs, we create space for new, more empowering beliefs to take root.
So it's not just about getting rid of the negative, it's also about cultivating the positive.
Exactly. It's about replacing those old limiting stories with new, empowering narratives that support our growth and well-being.
And that ties back to the idea of embracing our uniqueness, right? It's about recognizing and appreciating our strengths, talents, and passions.
Absolutely. And it's about giving ourselves permission to shine, to express ourselves authentically, and to pursue those things that light us up even if they don't fit into conventional expectations.
It's about finding that arena where we can truly thrive, that space where our unique gifts can flourish.
And remember, finding that arena is a process of discovery. It's not something we figure out overnight. It often involves experimentation, taking risks, and learning from our mistakes.
But isn't making mistakes a sign of failure?
Not at all. In fact, one source argues that embracing failure is essential for growth,
Okay, how so?
because failure is often just feedback. It's an opportunity to learn, adjust course, and try again with new insights.
So instead of viewing failure as a setback, we can see it as a stepping stone on our path to success.
Exactly. And sometimes those detours and unexpected challenges lead to even more fulfilling outcomes than we could have imagined.
It's like that saying, sometimes life's best adventures are the ones we didn't plan for.
I love that. It's about embracing the unpredictable nature of life and trusting that even when things don't go according to plan, there's always something to be learned and gained from the experience.
This is reminding me of another concept from your sources, the idea that life is full of last times.
Ah, yes, those moments that pass without us realizing their significance until they're gone.
Like the last time you rode your bike as a child, or the last time you saw a dear friend before they moved away, or the last time you had a conversation with a loved one before they passed.
Those moments are so poignant because they highlight the preciousness of time and the importance of cherishing the present moment.
Because we never know when something will be the last time. And it's often those seemingly ordinary moments that we end up missing the most.
Exactly. So the takeaway is to savor the present moment, to appreciate the people in our lives, and to make the most of each experience.
Because even the mundane can become magical when we view it through the lens of gratitude.
And speaking of gratitude, one source really emphasizes the importance of recognizing that the good old days are happening right now.
It's a powerful reminder to stop longing for some idealized past or future and to appreciate the beauty and richness of the present moment.
It's about choosing to find joy and contentment in the here and now, even amidst the challenges and imperfections of life.
And speaking of imperfections, one thing that often holds us back is that fear of not being good enough.
Yeah, that fear of perfectionism can be so paralyzing.
Yes.
It can prevent us from taking risks, pursuing our dreams, and expressing ourselves fully.
So how do we overcome that fear? How do we give ourselves permission to be imperfect?
One source offers a really helpful reframe. Instead of striving for perfection, aim for progress.
So it's not about getting everything right all the time. It's about constantly learning, growing, and evolving.
Exactly. It's about celebrating those small wins, acknowledging our effort, and recognizing how far we've come, even if we haven't yet reached our ultimate destination.
It's about being kind to ourselves and embracing the messiness of the journey.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Your sources also highlight the importance of surrounding yourself with supportive people.
People who lift us up, encourage our growth, and celebrate our successes.
Exactly. The people we spend time with have a profound impact on our well-being and our ability to thrive.
It's like that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So true. So choose your company wisely. Surround yourself with people who inspire you, challenge you, and support you on your journey.
And don't be afraid to seek guidance and support from mentors, coaches, or therapists who can provide valuable insights and help you navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life.
That's so important. Having a support system can make all the difference.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. Maybe it's time to shift gears and explore some specific strategies for putting these ideas into action. What do you think?
I'm all for that. Let's dive into some practical tools and techniques in part 3.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big ideas here,
Yeah.
embracing our uniqueness, finding our arena, challenging those limiting beliefs. But what about the actual how?
Right, the practical stuff.
Exactly. Where do we even begin to put all this into practice?
One of the most important things that all of your sources emphasize is that you don't have to wait for permission. You have the power to give yourself permission to live a more authentic life.
I think so often we're waiting for someone else to tell us it's okay to be ourselves.
Yeah, like we need a permission slip or something.
Right. But really the only validation we need is our own.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that might mean letting go of things that no longer serve you, Maybe those limiting beliefs we talked about.
Right.
Maybe certain relationships or habits that are holding you back.
It's like that image from one of the sources that I loved
Oh, yeah.
of the person shedding layers and layers of clothing. It's such a powerful metaphor.
It is. It's like you have to empty your pockets of the burdens you're carrying before you can fill them with something better.
And what I find so empowering is that we don't need to wait for some big life change to start making these shifts. Like, we can literally start right now with even the smallest step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your sources are very clear on that. The hardest part is often simply starting. Once you take that first step, the momentum builds from there.
But what if you don't have it all figured out? What
Yeah.
if the path isn't perfectly clear?
That's where trust comes in.
Yeah.
Trusting yourself, trusting the process, and trusting that even when things feel uncertain, you have the inner resources to navigate the challenges.
And that's a muscle we can build, right?
It is. The more you step outside of your comfort zone, the more you realize you're capable of handling whatever comes your way.
It's like each time you face a fear and come out the other side,
Yeah.
you build that trust in yourself.
It's a snowball effect.
It is. This makes me think about how we often look back on the past and kind of romanticize the good old days.
Oh yeah, the good old days.
But one of the sources said it so well. The good old days are happening right now.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's such an important reminder to shift our focus to the present moment, you know?
Yeah, to savor what's happening right now.
Yeah, to savor the experiences we're having right now. To create memories that we'll actually look back on fondly in the future.
And to find joy in the simple things.
Exactly. Instead of waiting for some future point in time when we think we'll finally be happy,
Right.
we can choose to find happiness in the here and now.
And that choice is available to us in every single moment.
That's powerful. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways you hope our listener will walk away with?
I think the biggest one is that the power to live a more fulfilling life is within each of us. It starts with embracing your unique perspective, trusting your intuition, and giving yourself permission to just be who you truly are.
And to take action.
Yes, absolutely. Even if it's just one small step today.
So what's one thing our listener can do right now to start putting these ideas into practice?
I'd say take a moment to reflect on what resonated most with you from this conversation. What sparked your interest? What felt like a truth you already knew but maybe needed reminding of? And then ask yourself, what's one small action you can take today, no matter how small, to move in the direction of that truth?
That's a great place to leave it. Remember, the journey of self-discovery is the lifelong adventure. Embrace the unknown, trust the process, and enjoy the ride.